I am an African American female, although I would classify myself as an Israelite, and you will find out why in this video. I am from a long line of slaves from the American South. Orangeburg, South Carolina on my mother's side, and Colfax, Louisiana on my father's side, to be specific. Although I was born and raised in New York, as both sides of my family joined in the Great Northward Migration, when 6 million blacks moved out of the rural southern United States to the urban North, Midwest, and West between 1910 and 1970, I have always been someone who was intrigued by ancestry, history, language origination, and migration patterns of people groups. This led me to do a DNA test, where I discovered something quite interesting. If your lineage is relative to mine, or if you are fascinated with history, come with me on a journey as we discover our connection to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Most, if not all, so-called Africans sold into slavery all across the world are associated with the DNA haplogroup E1B1A, as I am also. You can see pictured here from my DNA sample submitted to mytrueancestry.com. As you can see, this E1B1A is shared by the great Nelson Mandela, and surprisingly enough, Ramesses III, the famous pharaoh of Egypt. I was quite surprised to discover that I had a personal DNA connection to Pharaoh Ramesses III of Egypt, and I wanted to discover how that could be possible. I decided to dig a little deeper. I did some research and discovered the descendants of Jacob, yes, Jacob of the Bible, all share this E1B1A DNA haplogroup. Shocking, right? Interesting, but how did the Pharaoh of Egypt share in this lineage? Good question. First, let's take a look at what the scientists have to say on the matter. The genetic remains of Ramesses III and Tutankhamun had a kinship with sub-Saharan Africans in one analysis. Keita cautioned that this does not mean that the royal mummies lacked other affiliations, which he argued had been obscured in typological thinking. Keita further added that different data and algorithms might give different results, which reflects the complexity of biological heritage and the associated interpretation. Now, let's look at what the historical biblical records have to say on the matter when we read the story of Joseph, Jacob's son. We know that he was sold into slavery in Egypt by his brothers, most notably Judah. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Genesis chapter 37, verses 26 to 27, KJV. We can discuss the significance of Judah being the one to suggest Joseph's enslavement, and why Judah is still in the land of his captivity in all four corners of the earth to this very day. Let me know down in the comments if you would like a video on this topic. As we know in the story of Joseph of the Bible, after his enslavement and imprisonment, he later becomes second in command, only after Pharaoh, because he saved everyone from the 7 years of famine. He brought his father and 11 brothers into Egypt to live. Because of this, they all survived the famine. Now the missing piece to the puzzle and to fully understand what happens next. In the time after the settlement of the Israelites in Egypt, but before the exodus of Moses, we read about in the Bible, as this will be vital to our understanding how we can still find this E1B1A DNA in the Valley of the Kings of Egypt to this day. We need to turn to the Book of Jubilees. This book was originally part of the 1611 King James Bible as part of the 14 books of the Apocrypha or hidden books. These were later removed by the Catholic Church, and one read of this book will tell you exactly why they wanted it removed. Let's read Book of Jubilees, chapter 46, Sepharia version. And it came to pass that after Jacob died, the children of Israel multiplied in the land of Egypt. And they became a great nation, and they were of one accord in heart, so that brother loved brother, and every man helped his brother, and they increased abundantly, and multiplied exceedingly 10 weeks of years, all the days of the life of Joseph. And there was no Satan, nor any evil, all the days of the life of Joseph, which he lived after his father Jacob. For all the Egyptians honored the children of Israel all the days of the life of Joseph. And Joseph died, being 110 years old. 17 years he lived in the land of Canaan, and 10 years he was a servant, and 3 years in prison, and 80 years he was under the king, ruling all the land of Egypt. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And Joseph commanded the children of Israel before he died, that they should carry his bones with them when they went forth from the land of Egypt. And he made them swear regarding his bones, for he knew that the Egyptians would not again bring forth and bury him in the land of Canaan. For Macamaran, king of Canaan, while dwelling in the land of Assyria, fought in the valley with the king of Egypt, and slew him there, and pursued after the Egyptians to the gates of Ermin. But he was not able to enter, for a new king, had become king of Egypt, and he was stronger than he. And he returned to the land of Canaan, and the gates of Egypt were closed, and none went out, and none came into Egypt. And Joseph died in the 46th Jubilee, in the 6th week, in the 2nd year, and they buried him in the land of Egypt, and his brethren died after him. And the king of Egypt went forth to war with the king of Canaan in the 47th Jubilee, in the 2nd week in the 2nd year. And the children of Israel brought forth all the bones of the children of Jacob, except the bones of Joseph. And they buried them in the field, in the double cave, in the mountain. And the most of them returned to Egypt, but a few of them remained in the mountains of Hebron. And Amram thy father remained with them. And the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Egypt, and he closed the gates of Egypt. And he devised an evil device against the children of Israel of afflicting them. And he said unto the people of Egypt, Behold, the people of the children of Israel have increased, and multiplied more than we. Come, and let us deal wisely with them, before they become too many, and let us afflict them with slavery, before war come upon us, and before they too fight against us. Else they will join themselves unto our enemies, and get them up out of our land, for their hearts and faces are towards the land of Canaan. And he set over them taskmasters to afflict them with slavery. And they built strong cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. And they built all the walls, and all the fortifications which had fallen in the cities of Egypt. And they made them serve with rigor, and the more they dealt evilly with them, the more they increased and multiplied. And the people of Egypt abominated the children of Israel. Now, let's look at the history of the city. City of Rameses or Pi-Rameses was the new capital built by the 19th dynasty pharaoh Rameses II, my DNA connection, at Cantir near the old site of Avaris. The city had served as a summer palace under Seti I and may have been founded by Rameses I while he served under Horemheb. Now, let's take a look at the monarchy of Egypt. 1427 BC to 1401 BC, Amenhotep II was the 7th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Amenhotep inherited a vast kingdom from his father, Thutmose III, and held it by means of a few military campaigns in Syria. However, he fought much less than his father, and his reign saw the effective cessation of hostilities between Egypt and Mitanni, the major kingdoms, vying for power in Syria. Amenhotep's last campaign took place in his 9th year. However, it apparently did not proceed farther north than the Sea of Galilee. According to the list of plunder from this campaign, Amenhotep claims to have taken 101,128 slaves. 1401 BC to 1388 BC, Thutmose IV was born to Amenhotep II in Tea, but was not actually the crown prince, and Amenhotep II's chosen successor to the throne. Some scholars speculate that Thutmose ousted his older brother in order to usurp power, and then commissioned the dream stele in order to justify his unexpected kingship. Thutmose's most celebrated accomplishment was the restoration of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Nefertari, not Nefertiti, was a queen of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, the first great royal wife of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, but they had no children before her death. He had children with other wives. Let's read Genesis chapter 41, verses 33 to 46 KJV. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man, discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand, or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the prisons of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. 1386 BC to 1349 BC, Amenhotep III, also known as Amenhotep the Magnificent, or Amenhotep the Great. He was the 9th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. According to different authors, he ruled Egypt from June 1386 BC to 1349 BC, or from June 1388 BC to December 1350 or 1351 BC, after his father Thutmose IV died. Amenhotep was Thutmose's son by a minor wife, Mutemuia. He ruled Egypt sometime after his father Thutmose IV died. Here, let's consider to ourselves, why is there such a discrepancy with the years of Amenhotep III's ruling years? I believe this is because there was a foreign empire ruling sometime in between that disrupted the consecutive years of reign from Father Thutmose IV to his son Amenhotep III. The king of Canaan was in control of the Egyptian territory for a few unspecified years, as we read in the Book of Jubilees. Amenhotep III was married to Queen Tai, the daughter of Joseph, and Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. 1398 BC to 1338 BC, Queen Tai was the great royal wife of the Egyptian pharaoh Amenhotep III, mother of Pharaoh Akhenaten and grandmother of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Her father was Uya, also known as Joseph, and her mother was Thuya, also known as Asenath. Burial number KV 35 in the Valley of the Kings in the city Thebes. In 2010, DNA analysis confirmed Queen Tai as the mummy known as the Elder Lady, found in the tomb of Amenhotep II in the year 1898. According to Wikipedia, Tai's father, Uya, was a non-royal, wealthy landowner from the upper Egyptian town of Akhmim, where he served as a priest and superintendent of oxen or commander of the chariotry. Tai's mother, Thuya, was involved in many religious cults, as her different titles attest, singer of Hathor and chief of the entertainers, all which suggest that she was a member of the royal family. Egyptologists have suggested that Tai's father, Uya, was of foreign origin due to the features of his mummy and the many different spellings of his name, which all imply it was a non-Egyptian name in origin. Some suggest that Queen Tai's strong political and unconventional religious views might have been due not just to a strong character, but to foreign descent. 1353 BC to 1334 BC, Akhenaten was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, the 10th ruler of the 18th dynasty. Before the 5th year of his reign, he was known as Amenhotep IV. As a pharaoh, Akhenaten is noted for abandoning Egypt's traditional polytheism and introducing monotheism, worship centered around one god, whom he called Aten. This culture shift away from traditional religion was reversed after his death. Akhenaten's monuments were dismantled and hidden, his statues were destroyed, and his name excluded from lists of rulers compiled by later pharaohs. Traditional religious practice was gradually restored, notably under his close successor Tutankhamun. who changed his name from Tutankhaten early in his reign. When some dozen years later, rulers without clear rights of succession from the 18th dynasty founded a new dynasty, they discredited Akhenaten and his immediate successors and referred to Akhenaten as the enemy or that criminal in archival records. I wonder why. Why did they consider one of their own pharaohs as an enemy? You can look up the Egyptian monarchy line called the New Dynasty. I guess they thought the bloodline had been tainted by Israel, and they were right. Akhenaten was all but lost to history until the late 19th century discovery of Amarna, or Akhetaten, the new capital city he built for the worship of Aten. Furthermore, in 1907, a mummy that could be Akhenaten's was unearthed from the tomb numbered KV 55 in the Valley of the Kings. Genetic testing has determined that the man buried in KV 55 was Tutankhamun's father, but its identification as Akhenaten has since been questioned. They do not want this man to be a part of their historical record. They keep trying to erase his memory. Nefertiti, 1370 BC to 1330 BC, was a queen of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Nefertiti and her husband were known for their radical overhaul of state religious policy, in which they promoted the earliest known form of monotheism, called Atenism, centered on the sun disk and its direct connection to the royal household. With her husband, she reigned at what was arguably the wealthiest period of ancient Egyptian history. Some scholars believe that Nefertiti ruled briefly as Neferueten after her husband's death and before the ascension of Tutankhamun. She is better known and recognized in history than her husband was. 1341 BC to 1323 BC Tutankhamun, also known as Tutankhaten, was the third last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt. He ascended to the throne around the age of 9 and reigned until his death around the age of 19. The most significant actions of his reign were reversing the societal changes enacted by his predecessor, Akhenaten, during the Amarna period. Tutankhamun restored the traditional polytheistic form of ancient Egyptian religion, undoing the religious shift of one god, and moved the royal court away from Akhenaten's capital. The young man, being only 9 years old, was most likely very heavily influenced when making those decisions. Tutankhamun was one of few kings worshipped as a deity during his lifetime. This was usually done after death for most pharaohs. His parentage is debated as they are not attested in surviving inscriptions. DNA testing has identified his father as the mummy within tomb number KV 55, thought to be the pharaoh Akhenaten. His mother was identified as a mummy from tomb number KV 35, which was also his aunt. 1303 BC to 1213 BC Ramesses II, commonly known as Ramesses the Great, was an Egyptian pharaoh. He was the third ruler of the 19th dynasty. Along with Thutmose III of the 18th dynasty, he is often regarded as the greatest, most celebrated, and most powerful pharaoh of the New Kingdom, which itself was the most powerful period of ancient Egypt. In conclusion, history, biblical connection, and DNA trail shows just how my DNA became related to Tutankhamun and Ramesses. All 12 sons of Jacob, including Joseph, have the DNA haplogroup E1b1a. And that concludes today's lesson. I hope you learned something valuable about your history. Tell me, what is something new you learned from this lesson? In what way has it changed your perspective of history or your perspective of yourself? Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, and we will be sure to try and answer them as best we can. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye for now. Until the next video. Shalom, family.